Hello everyone, it's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland Reviewer, and welcome to the Wasteland. And continuing my long streak of basically watching every single Coen Brothers film and reviewing them on here and talking in depth. And this week, I'm joined by my friend Kristin, a.k.a. Miss Filmingo. So, Kristin?
Well, you're joined by two guests, me and then, the big Lebowski over here.
The dude abides.
Yes.
But does the dude abide the Ladykillers? We're going to find out. So definitely would rather watch the Big Lebowski.
Yeah, but we'll talk about that more later, unfortunately.
We'll talk more about that later. Now, in terms of the structure of the show, if this is your first time watching Welcome to the Wasteland, we start off with coming attractions, then our feature film, and then do a little Q&A. So starting this week, since I have a guest this time, we're actually going to talk about two films. So Kristin's film for this week that she's going to be focusing on is Stowaway, which is a new Netflix release directed by Joe Penna, who previously did Arctic, and which I'm a huge fan of, with Mads Mikkelsen. And this film is starring Anna Kendrick, Toni Collette, Daniel Day Kim, and Shamir Anderson, and that looks like the whole cast. So,
yeah.
Kristin, why are you excited about Stowaway?
I tend to get very excited about certain space films, and particularly, like you just said, Arctic was Joe Penna's breakout film to introduce him. He's an excellent filmmaker, and I love the fact that he just went from YouTube, because he's Mystery Guitar Man on YouTube.
I did not know that. Look at that.
Yeah. So, very, very nice clue and, acknowledgement. He worked his way up, and now he's like this, profound filmmaker. And look at the cast. I mean, it's insane. I love Toni Collette. Anna Kendrick's great, and Daniel Day Kim. But I'm not familiar with Shamar Anderson, but I love this small cast, and I think all of them are going to do really, really well in this Netflix film. So I'm excited for it. So the premise goes, a 3-person crew on a mission to Mars faces an impossible choice when an unpleasant passenger jeopardizes the lives of everyone on board. That's all I needed. I actually didn't watch the trailer. I saw enough photos on Instagram where they were showing some behind the scenes stuff, and I was just like, between the cast alone and the director, I'm just gonna watch it.
And honestly, I haven't really watched a whole lot of trailers except for the new Shang Chi trailer that came out today.
Yes.
I had to watch that one.
Yes, you had to watch that one. That one looks awesome. I was very surprised how that trailer turned out.
I think it's also really funny this is coming out the same year as Mortal Kombat. And I'm like,
yeah.
So Marvel Mortal Kombat. But we're talking about Stowaway, which is a Netflix film, which that's impressive. Joe Penna did Arctic, which is a great film, and now getting the big bucks from Netflix.
Yeah, he's really working his way up, and I'm really excited to see what this next big project is for him. And, teaming up with Bleecker Street. And shout out to Bleecker Street, because they have another film coming out this weekend called Together. I also recommend people going to check that out. But this weekend, I'll be focusing on Stowaway. Right before the Oscars, though.
Right before the Oscars. I definitely recommend Together as well. And I'm going to be writing a review for Stowaway on Sif Pop. So catching that so when I post this is coming out Friday. So this will already have been out because it comes out on Thursday. So hopefully some of you check out Stowaway on Netflix. Now, my pick for this week, I already mentioned it, is Mortal Kombat. So for me, I've watched the 1995 Mortal Kombat movie more times than I could probably remember. And I just love the campiness, the ridiculousness of it. And I've played a handful of Mortal Kombat games over the years, usually not great at them. Pretty bad. But the idea of this, we have MMA fighter Cole Young seeks out Earth's greatest champions in order to stand against the enemies of Outworld in a high-stakes battle for the universe. Sounds like a Mortal Kombat movie. So honestly, it's a Mortal Kombat movie, and they're actually doing a lot of these characters as actual Asian characters, which is probably for the best, you would think, in 2021, seeing as they're mostly Asian characters. But what are we here for? Fatalities, crazy fight scenes, and an hour and 50 minutes of complete mayhem. So that's what I'm looking forward to in Mortal Kombat this weekend.
It's interesting, to see like the fan base, because I feel like critics do not understand. They trashed the first film, and I've seen the Rotten Tomatoes score, and they're still not liking it. So this film is mostly geared towards fans, I feel like, and giving to the many fans what they asked for, which was, blood, guts, fighting, and all that jazz is, what the original game adaptation was. So
to be perfectly honest, like these original games of Mortal Kombat, it's like you literally just fight up a tower kind of thing. So it's like they don't have a whole lot of plot to them. And basically it's enter the dragon, go do a martial arts tournament to the death. So that's what we're going to get. And I'm excited to watch it. It's in theaters. It'll also be on HBO Max. I'll be watching it on HBO Max this weekend. But those are coming attractions. So now it's time for us to hop into our film for this week, which is the Coen Brothers, interesting to say the least, adaptation of I believe it was either 50s or 60s British dark comedy.
Yes.
Which this film is a very interesting place in the Coen Brothers filmography, because I feel like this was like the end of the early 2000s of them really leaning into Preston Sturges kind of silly oddball comedies. And then 3 years later came out with No Country for Old Men.
Yeah, they realized where they messed up and realized they don't succeed in certain areas. So,
Which, it's interesting because they have made films like this work before with like Raising Arizona. It's kind of the same basic screwball, oddball comedy, but something about this one doesn't really click. And I'm going to let Kristin, so this was your first time watching this, correct?
This was my first time watching it, and I wasn't going to rent it because I was like, I don't have the money to rent it right now. Then they were offering out Cinemax, which I don't have. So I had to go old school and rent it on DVD. So I'm going to put this out there. My DVD copy kept skipping.
Okay.
So that's how old school.
That just makes it even better. I am...
Oh my gosh, there it is.
Pulling out my copy.
That's exactly like what I have.
Yep.
Where I had to borrow it from my local library. But yeah, this was based on, I looked up the year that the original comedy was based on, and it was like the 1955 film, which I have never seen.
I have not either.
And I just knew the 2004 version of the Coen Brothers, just didn't watch it and had zero interest in viewing it because, over the years, seeing people create watch lists and creating like a rank list, this film was very much ranked below on the list. So I viewed it multiple times. So going into it, I didn't expect much. And I pretty much got what everybody, what had to say about how, unfunny and just dry the film is.
I feel like this particular film shows the Coen Brothers in a weird place at trying too hard.
Oh, definitely. I could definitely see that.
Because it's like, in general, the Coen Brothers are generally very assured. Like, we know what we do, we know how to do it, and we do it. This feels like them trying to get laughs out of people.
They were trying way too hard and to create something that they're not, particularly like good in that field. And, it just didn't translate in the ways that they wanted to, because from reading the reviews, they kind of like basically took what, they had, the original had, and just pasted it here and just changed up very minor details.
Yeah, because the original one's it takes place, I believe, in London, and is about, it has Sir Alec Guinness in it, who is the main character, a.k.a. Obi-Wan Kenobi, for probably most people who knows who Alec Guinness is. And they burrow through the basement of the boarding house that they're in to get into a bank safe. Here we have Tom Hanks, which this is the saddest part. Tom Hanks in a Coen Brothers movie, and
Yeah,
this is the best they
honestly.
give him to work with, and he is a eloquent and just very verbose Southern professor who's a con man, and he has a group of
Yeah.
other criminals who stay at this older black woman's home and burrow through her dirt basement to try to break into the safe of a casino boat. So basically,
Yeah.
it is the same basic idea, except we're taking it from London and putting it in the Deep South.
Yes.
And it has a very Southern feel to it. It has a
Yes.
lot of Southern Baptist kind of event, has a lot of gospel music, which I think
Hmm.
is one of the more interesting parts of the film. And having that kind of music and everything injected into it, I felt like they were trying to catch the same spark they did with "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou" uh
Oh, yeah.
with bluegrass music and like American folk music. They're like, well, we made that work, so here's a bunch of Southern gospel music.
I thought
And
it was an interesting choice that they opened with Sam Cooke, though, to get that feel for it. Because the
mhm.
song that opens with it is "Come Let Us Go Back to God." And I was just like, okay, this is going to be interesting to see how this plays out then.
It definitely sets a tone for the rest of the film. And I feel like this film feels very rushed.
Oh, yeah.
Generally, I feel like Coen Brothers movies are really expertly paced. And this film, especially the third act of the film, just feels like, how quickly can we get through the rest of the story and wrap things up?
You see that really come out towards the very, very end of the film. You see them, basically, all the criminals get the money, you
Yep.
know, perfectly, and what happens is they end up like killing each other, and I'm like, wait, we only have like 15 minutes left of this movie. Like, how is this whole killing of
They
this
all
other woman gonna happen in this short time of 15 minutes? And they end up all killing each other, and like not really killing each other. They just die, like in on common ways, and just like it feels like accidental, basically.
Mhm.
And you know, the woman gets the money in the end. So,
Which it's and that's a thing, it is really rushed at the very end of this film because they all die of strange happenstance, and it's
yeah.
just like you have Marlon Wayans who accidentally gets shot in a scuffle with J.K. Simmons. J.K. Simmons wants to screw everybody over, so they kill him.
Mhm.
The general like falls down the stairs and breaks his neck.
Yeah, after choking on a cigarette.
Yep. Which they do a good job of leaving those details because like throughout the
Yes.
film, and that's the thing, Coen Brothers are very detail oriented, and
Oh,
a
very much so.
lot of things come back. And then you have Lump shoots himself in the face, and then some raven knocks a gargoyle off a bridge and
Yeah,
hits
those
Tom Hanks in the
gargoyles. Those
head.
are ugly looking gargoyles, I must say.
It's like the last 15 minutes of this is so strange, and the Coen Brothers really know how to make awkward violence work. But in this movie, it just felt too cartoony. At some point, this felt like a cartoon,
Yeah.
and it because they've done this so much better in Raising Arizona and the film right before this, Intolerable Cruelty. I love that movie so much, and this one, it's trying too hard, and I laughed more watching No Country for Old Men
Yeah.
than this, which says a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. Like I could think of some other Coen Brothers movies that I laughed a little bit more in, and just, where the comedy at least, they weren't really going for a laugh where I laughed. But for here, I was like, the joke was being set up and then it played out, and then I'd like, okay, it wasn't really that funny, you know.
Well, and I feel like Coen Brothers humor works the best when it feels very organic, and this definitely feels forced. They're like trying for punchlines and jokes and stuff like that. And throughout the film, you have things like the running gag of the older black woman's husband's picture,
Mm-hmm.
who keeps making all like the silly faces and like judgmental faces and stuff like that. That is so Preston Sturges style, quirky, oddball comedy. And my two least favorite Coen brothers are very much those kinds of movies. It's that and the Hudsucker Proxy. They both really
Okay.
lean into that screwball comedies from like the 1930s and the 1940s. And the Coen brothers love those kinds of films. And I feel like when they're either sporadically used or somehow they made it really work in Raising Arizona, but they don't really do straight up comedies the best.
No, they don't.
Their black comedies are so much better. And like even The Big Lebowski, it's a noir. It's a
Mm-hmm.
detective story in the end, and it just has such a great sense of humor and amazing characters. The
Yeah.
characters in this, so first off, Irma P. Hall, who plays the older black woman, she's great. I love
She
her
was
so
the
much.
best part, I think, about that film. It really kept me actually interested in the entire film. If it wasn't for her, I don't think I would have really cared as much for Tom Hanks or Marlon Wayans and J.K. Simmons, because I really didn't find their characters fascinating nor interesting, or even characters able enough to root for them, even
Yeah,
though you're like made you're not made to like them in any way. But they just didn't really do anything for me. Even Tom Hanks' performance didn't really like sell it off for me. I just thought he was basically felt like a gumball that, didn't really work out in any way.
he's an eccentric weirdo.
Yes.
And he just has like weird quirks and ticks about him and stuff like that. And I definitely understand where they're going with his character, and it's Tom Hanks. So he definitely went all in on it.
Oh
And
yeah.
it's so interesting because Tom Hanks going back to being in a pure comedy again in the 2000s, and it just fell flat like this. Because like
Yeah.
I think this was a year after like Road to Perdition, where he played
Yeah.
a hitman, and I love that film. And The Ladykillers, it's like if it wasn't Tom Hanks, I don't know how much I would even care as much as I do for that character. And then you do have J.K. Simmons, who's an amazing actor, and he's just such a weird character with the IBS and the Freedom
Yeah, I didn't think
Riders.
that was funny because it reminded me of like, how like there's like a lot of fart jokes and like an Adam Sandler movie. This is what it reminded me of. I'm like, I don't want to visit this IBS thing. I don't care.
I didn't sign up to watch a Coen Brothers movie for fart jokes.
Yeah.
Like that's not why I'm here. And like like J.K. Simmons is definitely committed with his lovely mustache, and
Yes.
he's just like, and how like weaselly he is, and how unlikable his character is because he's so whiny, and yet he tries to give Marlon Wayans' character, which here I think this is one of the biggest parts that doesn't really work for me, is the portrayal of like modern black culture in it.
Okay, yeah.
Because like let's be real here, the Coen brothers are like the two whitest dudes from Minnesota,
Oh, definitely.
and like Marlon Wayans doesn't fit well in this movie.
No, I don't think really anybody fit well for this movie, to be honest. And they were all just felt like the needle, like a weird needle in a haystack, kind of, because it was just like they were just like so miscast. I felt like, in a way.
It's like I don't know if Marlon Wayans' sense of humor really fits into a Coen Brothers film, and that's what
Yeah.
made it so weird. And like um it's See Ma, who like has been in so like The Farewell recently, Mulan recently, and he plays the general. I like the general. He was
I
probably
think the best casting choice out of all of them.
yeah, out of the crew,
Yeah.
like the four henchmen basically, he's by far the most interesting character, and it's interesting because like that running gag of him smoking and him always hiding his cigarette in his mouth, it came back to bite him. And
Yeah.
fun fact, so there's two young men who rob his shop at the beginning. One of them's out as Hodge.
Really?
Yeah, I'm like, he looks like out as Hodge, and I looked it up, and it is him. And I'm just like,
No
holy crap!
way.
So, and
I would have
then
never pictured that.
Lump, who's this young guy from Remember the Titans and We Are Soldiers. I just think it's a stupid character. It's a stupid
Yeah,
gimmick.
that's what the character was basically set up to be, like the dumb jock, doesn't get far in life, who wants, to be successful at least and prove everybody wrong about how, maybe a dumb person can succeed. And obviously he just doesn't.
Yeah, and there's
It made me think, I'm just going to say,
go ahead.
His character, I guess maybe because of the casting choice, because one of my least favorite Coen Brothers movies that I really wanted to like was Hail Caesar.
Also another one that a lot of people were disappointed by.
And the casting choice reminded me of like when they casted Channing Tatum in that movie.
Oh man, Channing Tatum.
And it's like, a flashback to here. I'm like, not saying that Channing Tatum isn't a bad actor. Channing Tatum could be a good actor, but when I'm thinking about it now, I'm like, this is like the Channing Tatum role that, shouldn't have been casted for a film and for a character, because this actor, I forgot who he is. He hasn't been in much ever since.
Yeah, because
after this movie,
Ryan Hurst was big in the early 2000s. Because like remember the Titans came out in 2000, and then he was in We Were Soldiers with Mel Gibson and Sam Elliott, and then this, and like it looks like he had a smaller role in The Walking Dead recently, but like I don't think he really did much like big after this. And to be perfectly honest, there's only a few characters that really fit well in this movie, and like Irma P. Hall's character, the Marva, works, and she's great. I love seeing Stephen Root popping up in Coen Brothers movies, and he's just the jerk boss that Marlon Wayans works for. And Stephen Root always works in Coen Brothers movies. Actually, he has low-key one of my favorite lines in No Country for Old Men when Woody Harrelson's like, I was counting the floors and it looks like you're missing a floor. And he's like, I will look into it. And just like Stephen Root's just so intense about it. just like those little weird things. And that's the thing. I laughed more during No Country for Old Men than this. And this is supposed to be a comedy. And obviously No Country's not supposed to be a comedy, but it has that dry Coen Brothers wit. And that's where they work better. That dry kind of humor. Like, I love Tommy Lee Jones in No Country for Old Men, which I'll be talking about plenty next week because that's the next show. But it's so interesting because this goes from their worst to their arguably their best film. And I think it took them like, we need to take a step back and get serious again. And boy, did they. Because like in this film, you still have Roger Deakins shooting this film. And you definitely...
Yeah, which I was very surprised about.
Because
did not seem like a Roger Deakins film. I was like, what are you doing and capturing for this film?
Well, he did every Coen Brothers film from Barton Fink up until Hail Caesar. And then he did not do Ballad of Buster Scruggs. And then before that was Barry Sonnenfeld was their cinematographer.
Oh, right.
Which apparently this was supposed to be his film. He was supposed to direct this.
Way. Are you serious?
Yep. And honestly, this kind of feels more like a Barry Sonnenfeld kind of film than a Coen Brothers movie. So it's interesting because he pulled out and the Coen Brothers had written the screenplay and then wound up doing the film. And the thing is, the Coen Brothers aren't infallible, even though they're my favorite directors. Like Suburbicon, they couldn't make that story work. And then for some reason, George Clooney thought he could. And then they made the movie, and that's
like the other film they did, which was Gambit. Remember Gambit? It was like the 2013 movie.
I don't think, like, they've written a couple of films that they didn't wind up directing.
Yeah, it was a Colin Firth, and I think this was Cameron Diaz.
Interesting, because I know they did Unbroken, which Angelina Jolie directed.
Yeah.
And then I think my favorite film of theirs that they didn't direct was Bridge of Spies. But like, you have Coen Brothers writing, Tom Hanks starring, Steven Spielberg directing. Like,
Yeah.
you have a bit of a winner on your hands there. And that definitely sounded like a Coen Brothers movie when I sat and watched it. I'm like, yep, this sounds like they wrote this. But this film, Carter Burwell, I think, does a really fine job with the score. The Baptist gospel music, I think, is really used effectively. It just, like, I think the scenes that, I think my favorite scene in the film is when she's at church and they're doing that cross-cutting montage of them at the church and then pulling off the heist. Because, like, the Coen Brothers are amazing directors. And
Yeah,
that
they are.
montage works so well with the music and the cutting back and forth. I just feel like this film didn't have this right sense of humor about it. And an odd casting of characters. Because you know what the best part of Coen Brothers movies are? The characters.
Yeah,
Case in
definitely.
point, who's sitting right behind you.
Exactly.
Because, like, the Lebowski lives and dies on its extremely eccentric ensemble of weirdo characters.
Yeah, and Lebowski has been argued as like one of the greatest characters in cinema history of like all time. Here, it's like when you think for the Ladykillers, you don't really think of anybody the characters that really stand out in any particular way.
Well, and I think it's because there's not a whole lot of depth to any of these characters besides Marva. Like, she's the only one that has to really, who even has an arc in the film because she's challenged for her morality. Everybody else is just unlikable caricatures that kind of just like walk around and be silly. And in the end, you care about her. And I think it's so funny that she got all the money.
Yeah, and then yet she goes and donates in the end. But that's like the kind of character, you know.
Yeah.
She was set up to be, you know.
Well, and when the sheriff's just like, no, you keep the money. And it's just like, he didn't believe her. And she did have the money. Like, dude, what are you doing?
Yeah, yeah. So, everybody in this film does not have a brain except basically. So.
And she's the moral compass of the film. She is the only one who has like a real head on their shoulders because like Tom Hanks' character is too pompous and self-assured of himself to actually like make good decisions. And you see it at the end with just such a weird moment. But yeah, this is a strange film. It's definitely not my favorite Coen Brothers movie. It's honestly tied with my least favorite Coen Brothers movie.
What's your least favorite Coen Brothers?
This and Hudsucker Proxy are definitely my two least
I haven't seen that one.
It's the one that I've seen the least. Because, like, I'm not going to lie. I've watched this quite a few times.
Ladykillers? Like, really?
Yeah. And it's like, I love the Coen Brothers so much, but, like, the Hudsucker Proxy was their first studio film.
Okay.
And they also worked on it together with Sam Raimi, who also wrote the film, which also you can see that they're friends with Sam Raimi because the Coen Brothers worked on Evil Dead.
Right, yeah.
And like Bruce Campbell pops up in this film. So the one scene where they're doing the dog food commercial, also which had Greg Grunberg in it from like Alias and all those like J.J. Abrams stuff. And J.K. Simmons like keeps looking up at the PETA guy or whatever he is. That was Bruce Campbell.
Oh my gosh.
Just randomly thrown in the movie.
That's so random.
Because he's been in, I think, 3 Coen Brothers films just randomly. Because in Intolerable Cruelty, when they... Have you seen that one?
No, I haven't.
That one I definitely recommend. It's a charming, crazy, fun time. But they
given the fact George Clooney is in it, I'm gonna have to check it out because given my mom loves George Clooney.
Oh, George Clooney, and I will argue, does his best work with the Coen Brothers.
Okay, yeah.
And he understands the Coen sense of humor. And nobody makes a paranoid face quite like George Clooney from Burn After Reading.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, who are you? And I'm also going to be looking forward to talking about that one. Definitely not top tier Coens, but I still laugh a lot watching Burn After Reading.
Oh, it's funny. And then it's also like memed the most.
Yes, 100%. Oh man, but Bruce Campbell, they turn the camera and it's a soap opera on TV, and Billy Bob Thornton standing there as a surgeon, and then Bruce Campbell walks into frame and is just like, wait, what? And then he actually is a character in Hudsucker Proxy. He has lines and everything, which Sam Raimi wrote the film with them, so that makes sense because, you know, Bruce Campbell, Sam Raimi's around, Bruce Campbell's probably going to show up. Which also, Bruce Campbell better show up in Multiverse of Madness in some shape or form. That's all I gotta say. But I guess, Kristin, do you have any final thoughts on the Ladykillers?
No, it's just a film that I cannot fully recommend for anybody for who's like interested in, even in Tom Hanks, even with a diverse cast of characters. I will say this film was very diverse for its time. But yeah, this is a film that, like, if you're gonna watch the Coen Brothers, this is a film I would not want to introduce anybody to, and it's certainly not like in the top tier list of anything that I would want to rewatch again. Even it's just, it came out as a dry comedy that, you know, I think the Coen Brothers did want to succeed with, but they tried.
This one always felt like a bridge too far for them. Like, I think they should have stopped with Intolerable Cruelty, which is like 30s, 40s style oddball comedy, except it's darker. It has more of a bite to it, and also better characters, to be perfectly honest. But in the end, Ladykillers is definitely like arguably the worst Coen Brothers film. It definitely has the lowest rating on Rotten Tomatoes out of any of the films they directed together.
What is it like compared to like for like Hail Caesar? Because that's like one of my other least favorite Coen Brothers movies. Because I was trying to think about it, which one I would like watch like more of, and I would have to say like I enjoyed the cast more in Hail Caesar, because I guess I just prefer that cast over, you know, the Ladykillers. But I think, you know, even as a rewatchability, I would prefer to rewatch the Ladykillers as opposed to Hail Caesar.
There's parts of Hail Caesar that I love. There's also parts that feel like it never really feels like it comes together as a full cohesive film. And I love Josh Brolin. I think he's great in it. George Clooney is more or less just having a fun time. There's not a whole lot of depth to his character.
No.
And they don't go very deep into a whole lot of some of the deeper thoughts, but there's certain scenes that I love in Hail Caesar. One of my favorites is when they have all the religious leaders together to approve the film. That back and forth is great between like the rabbi, the different rabbis, the like Catholic priest and everything. And I have to say though, Channing Tatum can tap.
Yeah, that was a good scene though. I will take that. I will consider that.
That's 100% why I got cast in that movie.
Yeah.
Was to be able to do that.
Because he went from Magic Mike just to do that. So.
Exactly. But I would, to be honest, I'd probably watch Hail Caesar again over this because there's more parts of that film that I love. There's a very few things in this movie that I love, even for a Coen Brothers film. And I feel like Ladykillers is probably the thing. If you love the Coens and you really just want to see all of their work, this is probably one of the last ones you want to watch. Definitely watch almost anything else before this one. But
totally.
Those are our thoughts on Ladykillers. So we're going to shift gears into a couple of questions that I had in terms of Q&A. So in honor of this past week, which there wasn't a whole lot of films that came out this past Friday. Probably the biggest one was Monday, which is billed as like the anti-romance film because it's about you have this young couple who spark a romance over a weekend, and he does, like Sebastian Stan's in it, does the whole entire like running to the airport to stop her, and that's the first 25 minutes of the movie. And then you see what happens when it becomes an actual relationship.
Yeah.
So I have a question for you, Kristin, and I'll answer this as well. Is what is your favorite like anti-romance film?
Ooh, that's a good question. Ooh,
probably
Blue Valentine.
Okay. Yep.
I think that's usually the first film that can come to my mind because I just love Ryan Gosling in that movie.
Who wouldn't love Ryan Gosling? honestly.
That's very true.
He is such a weirdo. And I love when he plays weirdos. Like, I love, like, the nice guys. I just think
I adore that movie. That movie is so freaking good.
and then, which I'm actually going to say, save what I was going to say next because I have the flipped opposite question to this. But so Blue Valentine's yours. Mine is up in the air because
okay.
it makes you think that this is going to be a rom-com.
Oh yeah, from the poster alone, from the advertisement, it looks like a rom-com.
And then it definitely didn't turn out that way.
No.
So, not to spoil this one, but like things don't go how you expect in terms of, because like I love George Clooney and Vera Farmiga together. They were George Clooney's great. Up in the Air is a great film. It has such a great cast because like Anna Kendrick's great in it. I love Vera Farmiga. She's honestly one of my favorite actors.
I adore her in like Bates Motel. Bates Motel is like one of my favorite shows of like all time.
It's on my watch list. I have not gotten
around. Oh my gosh, you have to watch it.
But she obviously caught my attention in The Departed, and I've been a huge fan of her since. And this is my favorite role of hers, honestly. Well, would I go as far as saying is because like her and Patrick Wilson are so great in the Conjuring films, and I love them as a couple.
Me too.
Which also makes that's such a breath of fresh air in a horror film that I actually care about characters.
Yeah, me too. I love them as together because you can clearly see their chemistry work together.
But George Clooney and Vera Farmiga are so great in this, and then it has such a great supporting cast too. Because like the whole crux of the film is they fire people, and they come in, they fire Zach Galifianakis, they fire J.K. Simmons. That one was an extra tough scene. Danny McBride's in it in a small role, and then Jason Bateman's his boss, and Jason Bateman's just such a great asshole in that movie. And
it's rare you see Jason Bateman like play a really good like jerk, because then he's also like, you know, kind of like a jerk even in Juno, I feel like.
Well, yeah, as you get through Juno, he definitely turns out to be that way, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Which also, not to trigger you, Kristin, but Jason Bateman to me was the only redeeming quality of Thunder Force.
Oh no. No. I despise Thunder Force.
He felt like he's like, I'm gonna try my best to save this movie, and like he's on a whole different level with everybody else in that movie. I'm like, I actually thought he was funny and enjoyable. Everybody else was just like, I can't stand this movie.
I was talking about this with my co-host of the M&K Productions podcast. And we had the Infinity podcast on, and we were all discussing how we just weren't crazy fans of Jason Bateman in this film. And it was so odd to see him play a love interest to Melissa McCarthy. And I just like they are not meant to be like a compatible relationship couple, because I really liked them in Identity Thief together. It's not the best film, but they had a chemistry where it worked, you know, and was laughable, and, you know, you got through the film, you know, it was pretty standard for just basic comedy. Here, you know, they're supposed to play like a love interest, and they just feel like friends to me.
I hated Melissa McCarthy so much in Thunder Force. Like, she was just terrible. And I honestly was like, how long into this movie is she going to flop around? Because, you know, she's a plus size woman, and that's what you got to do as a comedian. And of course it happened. I'm like, called it.
Yeah.
Just like so terrible.
And but I feel like now, even when I think about it more, I feel like Bel Falcone doesn't have much faith in his wife. I think he relies so much lackluster that's comedy that doesn't exceed in like that's like Adam Sandler material style, that she can prove herself to be much more, you know, worthy.
I want more Can You Ever Forgive Me?
I even liked her like in Bridesmaids and all that stuff. Like, she's good when I feel like she can exceed more with it when it's without her husband.
I think she's better with Paul Feig movies and less Ben Falcone films. But I digress. Up in the Air, go check out that movie.
Yes, go watch Up in the Air.
It's a great film. So then my flip question is, what's your favorite rom-com?
Oh my goodness. This actually correlates because you participated in my rom-com event back in February. So one of my favorite rom-coms is actually Crazy Stupid Love. That was the film I chose to review about for the event on my Instagram. And I adore that movie. Another Ryan Gosling movie.
Yeah,
See, it's like Ryan Gosling can do no wrong in any genre, and I can love it.
And this is before La La Land.
It was before La La Land.
And here's the thing. That was my answer too. I am going to throw in another film on top of it, but talk about Crazy Stupid Love first. So I love this movie. The last time I watched it, and it was interesting, I watched it with my girlfriend Jess and her best friend Paige, and they had a serious issue with at least one of the storylines.
Which one was that one?
The son, like, crushing on his babysitter.
Okay, I could see that as maybe a little problematic today, but given the fact that it takes on a lens of, a young boy finding love in a girl that, is much more older than him, I feel like that was still kind of relatable to today, where,
well, I think
young boy or girl.
It's relatable. I think where it really gets weird is like she's probably 17, 18 years old and gives this kid naked pictures of herself.
Yeah, I think, and then that's when you realize, that can be argued with today's culture too, because now we're seeing that with a lot of our own celebrities, even in pop culture stands, because I'm not sure if you follow the YouTube drama and everything. There's that whole James Charles thing that came out and where he was sending news to his underage fans. There's some other YouTubers around this whole sphere where they also, where a celebrity has, sent, younger fans inappropriate photos. So I feel like there's some stuff you can search deep down and find some kind of connection to it. And as I rethought about it more and more, it relates very well today, even so.
Yeah, that storyline is a little weird now watching it, but the whole rest of the movie I love.
Oh, yeah.
The whole interactions with Jacob and Steve Carell's character, like when he shows up, he's like, "What's with the New Balance?
Yes,
eternity."
Yes.
And as somebody who wears New Balance, because I have a size 15 quadruple shoe, I was very offended when he beat those perfectly good New Balance.
I love how he dresses like a dad, because Steve Carell dresses like how my dad is.
And then he dresses up funny. And then he's like, damn.
A ladies' man and looks good.
Well, now Steve Carell looks like a lady killer. And it's just like, holy crap, Silver Fox now. And like, it's so funny because like, exactly, he dresses like a dad. And then when Jacob dresses him up and he's like, just Jacob, like the whole reaction where he's just like looking at him, and just Ryan Gosling's so great in this movie.
Oh, it's hard to find where a film I actually didn't really like Ryan Gosling's character. So. And
he plays, so like, he has a lot of range as an actor too, because like Jacob has this persona, and then when he does connect with Nana and like has that relationship with Emma Stone's character, it's like that facade goes away and you see what's really underneath it. And David Lindhagen, F that guy. Kevin Bacon. And like
the Kevin Bacon was just like the icing on top of the cake.
Yep.
Honestly, in that fight scene was so hilarious. It's just a mess of all sorts. And it's just like, what is going on?
You just have Steve Carell, Ryan Gosling, John Carroll Lynch, Kevin Bacon. And it's just like, what the hell's going on here? And how, like, I was shocked when all those storylines collided the first time I watched them. Like, I didn't expect this.
No,
Like,
there
it just,
wasn't much expected when you expected going into the film, and then you're like, oh man, wow.
and then you notice like they planted some seeds in this movie, and you're just like, oh crap, I didn't pick up on those. But just a quick shout out, without Crazy Stupid Love, Princess Bride's definitely my other favorite romantic comedy, because like
Yeah.
it's like the purest. Like, is it one of those kissing books, Grandpa? Just shut up and let me read the story.
I have to ask you, it was about this time about a year ago we got Quibi. And did you watch that series that came out?
So I was all in on Quibi. I was watching all the shows, and then I'm just like, after my free trial was up, I'm like, I'm not.
Oh yeah,
Like,
same.
COVID was in full force. I'm just like, nah. And my free trial was up before the Princess Bride thing came out, but Quibi got bought by Roku, I think.
Yeah,
So
I think so.
once it's on Roku, I'll watch it.
Yeah, honestly.
I want to see Hugh Jackman as Humperdinck.
I watched it because I started the trial a little bit later than when it initially like first came out. And then I ended up watching it, and I just fed it, and then it ended as soon as the when my free trial was over. I was like, well, okay, don't need to watch the rest of the shows. I saw the Dane DeHaan show I wanted to see. I saw the lights at the end of the street, whatever it was about the murder.
Yes.
And then
I watched Dummy.
Oh, I didn't watch Dummy. I watched.
Great.
Yeah, it didn't look good. It looked really stupid. And then the Princess Bride announcement, and then I was gonna cancel it just as soon as before they announced it. And I was like, all right, I'll just keep it until then. And then as soon as it was over, my free trial was over, and I was like, well, we don't need that anymore.
What a bold and like.
Oh, and I also watched The Most Dangerous Game, the Liam Hemsworth show. I forgot about that one.
Stop trying making Liam Hemsworth happen. Stop trying.
As an action hero.
Oh my God. Christoph Waltz was in it too. I'm like, they must have paid you a lot of money.
Yeah, and not Mia Goth, the other one who was in Sarah Godin from Enemy.
Mm-hmm. And then I was watching the 50 States of Fright.
Oh, I did watch that one too. I forgot about that one.
Because like the first one was directed by Sam Raimi.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, yes. And honestly, I would have loved it even more if he just directed all of them.
Yeah, I liked the first one he did, and the rest I thought were okay.
Mm-hmm. It felt like I was watching like the man who made Evil Dead Reborn again. I'm like, yes. Because like the last movie he directed was Oz the Great and Powerful.
I love that movie. I'm not gonna lie.
That's the thing. It's such a weird movie, and
I love it though.
There's a lot of things that like, especially like when Rachel Weisz like shows what she really looks like, and she totally looks like a deadite. It's like, swallow your soul, and I'm just like, I was waiting for that to happen, but I digress. So there's definitely some great rom-coms out there. If you haven't seen Crazy Stupid Love, it's somewhere up thereabouts. I love that.
And it's on Netflix currently.
So go stream it.
Yeah.
So enjoy that. But there's our Q&A. So I guess at this point, we got through our coming attractions, and we got through our feature of the week, Ladykillers, and a couple of questions. So at this point then, so I hope you all tune in next week for No Country for Old Men, which I'll be having actually my biggest show yet for Welcome to the Wasteland, since I'm having both my friends Matt and Alex over for the Oscars, and we're going to record it beforehand in person on camera. So that's going to be fun. But for this week, Kristin, thank you so much for joining me. And if you ever want to come back, I'm eventually going to wrap up Coen Brothers movies, and then I have to figure out where I'm going from there. So
Sam Raimi, why not Sam Raimi? That would be a lot of fun.
Honestly,
it would be like a little connection.
As of now, which that does make a lot of sense. Honestly, I was thinking of just going through my favorite directors, which if I were to take that path, Christopher Nolan's coming up next, which also means I have to watch some much longer movies.
Oh yeah, you're going to be there for a while.
Because that's the thing. Most Coen Brothers movies are like maybe 2 hours or less. Not a Christopher Nolan movie.
No, you're there for at least a good day and a half.
Interstellar, 3 hours. But This is a lot of fun, Kristin. Thank you for coming on, and shamelessly plug whatever you would like to shamelessly
Yay, I
plug.
get to shamelessly plug. Okay, great. So thank you for having me, Shane. You can find me on Instagram at Miss Filmingo. I am also the co-host of the M&K Productions podcast, so we are on Instagram there. So shamelessly plug that. And then I'm also on Twitter at KFilmingo. So thank you again for having me.
And thanks for coming, and thank all of you for always tuning in and supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.